It's OPB Politics Now for Friday, June 23rd, and the finish line is in sight. Last week, lawmakers ended the longest legislative boycott in state history, and since then, they've been back on the floor passing hundreds of bills. They've designated a new state vegetable, the potato, and they passed a bill banning TikTok on state devices. And it seems like Oregonians will soon be able to pump their own gas. Plus, the measure that nearly derailed the entire legislative session, the one dealing with gender-affirming care and abortion access, it's now headed to the governor's desk. With the flurry of activity this week, it's been hard to keep track of what's been happening at our state capitol, but we are here to help. Welcome to the podcast. I'm OPB Politics reporter Lauren Dake.
And I'm OPB Politics reporter Dirk, VanderHart.
Dirk, it's been a busy week. Bills came up for a vote by the dozen, and the Senate was working its tail off like someone hitting the gym with a New Year's resolution after years of sitting on the couch. But this part of session always makes me question the process. Policies are flying off the floor with little debate and seemingly little transparency. Is this really how democracy is supposed to work?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I've been talking to a lot of lawmakers about this. I talked to quite a few folks yesterday. You know, some called it messy or untidy, topsy-turvy. One state representative, Courtney Neron, compared it to the pressure release phase of an Instant Pot, which I thought was apt. But, you know, I will just say this. I don't think I've covered a legislative session where things didn't feel crazy and maybe not very satisfying at the end. This one definitely feels especially dizzying. You know, as you mentioned, both the House and Senate are hustling to clear this massive backlog of bills. And you know what didn't help, Lauren, is this internet outage we had on Wednesday, just as both chambers are really trying to get things done. That blocked lawmakers from passing any bills for hours, just sort of a nice cherry on top of this already chaotic session. You know, it is not just us, as I mentioned, who feel this way. I chatted with State Representative Pam Marsh about this yesterday. She's a Democrat from Ashland. Here's how she said she's thinking about it.
I think the process has not been pretty, and I don't think this is the session you're going to look at to say this is the way government and policy should operate. And we're going to have to own that, and we're seeing that right now with the deluge of bills that are coming through. In the end, when we step back a few weeks, a few months later, I think we'll be proud of some of the work.
Lawmakers are in various states of grumpiness, I would say. Actually, some I've talked to are pretty happy. They're happy their bills are moving. No one I've talked to, though, would disagree with Marsh's essential point here. Yeah, it's not pretty. It's not great. But a lot of folks, in the Capitol at least, are going to be proud of some of the things that were passed at the end.
Okay, well, let's just take a step back here in case our listeners have somehow missed our last several podcasts. Could you remind us how Democrats watered down some of the bills on abortion and gun safety to get Republicans in the Senate to return to work, and how those bills that nearly derailed this session are now headed to the governor's desk?
Sure. Yeah. Quick summary. Republicans walked out on May 3rd. They were protesting several bills that they labeled extreme, but they were also accusing Democrats of breaking the law in how they were passing bills. The big sticking point in the walkout was House Bill 2002, which, as you mentioned, would have expanded protections for abortion and gender-affirming care. But there was also House Bill 2005, which included 3 separate proposals for new gun restrictions. Democrats wound up making significant concessions on both of those. They trimmed some of the abortion provisions in HB 2002. They killed 2 of the 3 gun control proposals in HB 2005. And with those changes, as we know, Republicans came back, and the bills actually passed with relative ease last week, even though Republicans still opposed them. But sore feelings are still sort of in the air, I have to say. 5 conservative senators still haven't returned to the Senate. That's Brian Boquist, Cedric Hayden, Dennis Linthicum, Art Robinson, and Kim Thatcher. All seem to be indicating that they are gone for good. And some members of Republican leadership in the House have actually now stepped down from their roles, though we're not exactly sure why. It does seem to have to do with this deal that was struck.
Okay, well, another really noteworthy bill that is now headed to Governor Tina Kotek's desk is a measure that aims to overhaul the state's criminal defense system. Oregon has a shortage of public defenders, which has left hundreds of people without legal representation. Obviously, that's a huge crisis. What is this bill going to do to help?
So lawmakers have known for years, really, since 2019 at least, that Oregon's public defense system is almost certainly unconstitutional. That's simply because we have fewer attorneys than can responsibly tackle the number of clients who need them. But since the pandemic started, things have gotten, I would say, far worse. Now it's not just that we have attorneys who might be, so busy they can't offer effective assistance. We have people who actually just can't get an attorney. I mean, right now, according to the state, there are hundreds of people in jail facing charges who do not have an attorney to represent their interests, which is obviously a major problem. So I think it's safe to say this is one of the larger crises the state is facing. And it's obviously facing its share of crises right now. But lawmakers did a couple things this week. The first is they threw a lot of money at the issue. The budget for public defense contains something like $100 million that is meant to help pay public defenders more, maybe help with recruitment so we have more public defenders. But they're also fundamentally shifting the way the system works. So currently the state actually doesn't employ very many public defenders. It contracts with public defenders. It pays them via contract, and there's all these consortia, and it gets very complex. Lawmakers are now saying the state just needs to bring more public defense attorneys in-house. I think we are waiting to see what kind of impact these changes will have. I don't think anyone expects it to be a panacea, but it is certainly true that lawmakers have been acting on this pretty important crisis.
Let's talk about a bill that makes you really happy, Dirk. Oregonians are going to be able to pump their own gas. I know you, Dirk, from Michigan, really like this idea, and maybe it's just because I grew up here, but my very unpopular opinion is that I like sitting in my car and having someone else pump my own gas.
I don't think that is an unpopular opinion. I mean, I want to be careful here, honestly, because I think we've brought up this proposal in the past, and someone actually accused me of having improper bias on it. You're not wrong. I grew up pumping my own gas. I am occasionally, or maybe more than occasionally, grated by the fact that I have to wait for someone to do it for me. Here's the good news. Under the law that lawmakers passed this week, we both get to have our way. This bill doesn't end the requirement that gas stations must offer full service. What it does is tell gas stations that they can make up to half of their pumps self-service, which I think we all should expect pretty much every gas station will do. This was something that gas stations, fuel suppliers have pushed, in part because they say it's very hard to find people who want to work as attendants right now in this labor market, and maybe that makes it hard for them to do business. Some groups are pushing back. It's been cast as this massive giveaway to big oil. If my Twitter mentions are any indication, it's also got a lot of opponents among folks that just like this. They were perfectly happy that Oregon was one of just 2 states to block drivers from pumping their own gas. The other is New Jersey. The caveat here is that many rural parts of the state are already allowed to pump their own gas. If this goes into effect, it would just sort of extend that ability to urban parts of the state. I think it could be a good change. I know a lot of people disagree with me. We are waiting right now to see if Governor Tina Kotek will sign the bill. Her office has not wanted to comment on any bills that she might oppose or support this session. So now we wait.
Okay, well, hopefully best of both worlds there. As we've said, many, many other bills have passed or have been considered this week. Could you give us a few other highlights?
I can try. I'm still sorting this out as we speak. They are voting on bills in rapid succession. I mean, it's truly insane. Today, we watched lawmakers pass bills, just for instance, creating new penalties for what they are terming domestic terrorism. There's a bill to create misdemeanor consequences for possessing 5 or more fentanyl pills. There's a bill outlawing retail sales of puppies and kittens that passed, and a bill that sets minimum staffing levels for hospitals. There are also a lot of things still coming. Lawmakers are looking at bills to tax phone service to pay for a 988 hotline to help people in crisis, expand automatic voter registration, gives a tax break to semiconductor companies. I have a bigger list. I hesitate to go on. There is just a lot going on. And by the way, one thing we haven't mentioned is we kicked off this week with the legislature sort of coming out with something like $7 billion in new spending, these end of session budget bills that everyone looks to because they contain all the budget goodies. And, this is kind of where political favors are done. That all happened this week as well. Those will get voted on shortly. It is truly, truly dizzying. I hope my discombobulation communicates that to people.
Well, we're going to keep this podcast short because we probably will be back very soon with something more detailed when the session wraps up. Dirk, when is the session going to wrap up?
We asked House Speaker Dan Rayfield that earlier this week. He said he thought they could do it by Thursday or Friday, and I have to say that always felt a little crazy and probably just like a cruel joke. I mean, like I said, as we sit recording this, they are still facing this lengthy bill list. They're still voting. There just doesn't seem to be any realistic hope it would happen today, Friday. I am personally pinning my hopes on Saturday, tomorrow, but that will require a lot to go right. I think senators would need to work well into the night this evening to even make that possible. There would need to be minimal sort of fights over last minute changes to bills. And we do know right now that there are bills scheduled currently for a vote on Sunday, which doesn't bode well for my Saturday plans. But, things can change very quickly. Everything is fluid. My fingers are crossed. Saturday evening.
Okay, well, let's leave it there. We'll see you all down in Salem this weekend. Or if not, we will be back with a bonus episode when the lawmakers adjourn. Until then, you can find all of our reporting at opb.org. While you're there, why not click the big red Contribute Now button and become an OPB member? Thank you for your support, and thank you for listening. This episode of OPB Politics Now was produced by Andrew Thien, our audio engineer is Nalene Silva, and our music comes from Audio Network.